I believe grief is a sacred space. And I believe in that space that we are meant to transform and grow through that experience. Yes, it is painful. It's heart-wrenching, but the other side of the experience, we get to experience sadness and joy as a cohesive existence.
Welcome to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. I'm your host, Kendra Rinaldi. This is a space to explore the full spectrum of grief, from the kind that comes with death to the kind that shows up in life's many transitions. Through stories and conversations, we remind each other that we're not alone. Your journey matters, and here we're figuring it out together. Let's dive right in to today's episode. Let's start with a quick disclaimer. This podcast includes personal stories and perspectives on topics like grief, health, and mental wellness. The views expressed by guests are their own and may reflect individual experiences that are not meant as medical advice. As the host, I hold space for diverse voices, but that does not mean I endorse every viewpoint shared. Please listen with care and take what resonates with you. Welcome. Today I'm chatting with Terri Ann Russell. She is a Reiki Master Teacher, frequency holder, and author. She helps people by guiding them through the sacred alchemy of awakening, loss, and identity rebirth so they can become embodied, spiritually sovereign, and emotionally whole. And I look forward to getting to learn more about her journey and how she got to this place. And I'm sure you guys as listeners as well. So welcome, Terri Ann.
Thank you, Kendra. It's an honor to be here and speak with you today.
Thank you for sharing your story. And we'll be learning about how you got to where you are now. So let's start by chatting a bit about your upbringing and where you grew up, and then your family that you built, and your son, Anthony, of course, who will be big part of this conversation.
Of course, yes. So I grew up in a traditional American Italian family in New York, New Jersey. I was raised in the city, and then we moved to Jersey later on when I was a teenager. So I raised my older children in New Jersey for most of their life until I had my daughter. When she was born, I was 40. So I had my oldest son when I was 21 and my daughter when I was 40. So I was brought up pretty traditional, religious, with many different beliefs and conditions that were sort of pushed upon me. I started to change and shift unbeknownst to me at the time. I was going to go through this spiritual awakening, having a daughter at 40. I had already been questioning the things that I was taught and the things that I was taught to believe. And when I had my older children, I was not fully aware of all of those things until I had my daughter, and then I had a spiritual awakening. And so through that transformation, I started to see that all of those old beliefs, thoughts, and patterns were not mine. And I wanted to raise her really differently than I raised my boys.
What led? Was it the actual being pregnant with her? Is she the only girl?
She is.
Okay. Was it the actually being pregnant with her, or was it the fact that you were going to be mothering a daughter? Aside from where you were in your life, of course, at 40, but what was it about that sweet spot per se that made you kind of start questioning and rethinking your own beliefs?
It was very easily a book that was put in front of me, Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. And it sort of opened my eyes to the whole identity that I believed that I was. And it sort of put me into this existential crisis, because who I thought I was not who I was. I identified as mother, wife, daughter, and I had no real identity. Even though at that time when I had my older children, I worked outside the house, I still had no identity of who I was. What were my passions? What did I want to do? And so when my oldest son was getting ready to graduate high school, and I was asking myself these things, I got pregnant at 40. And so God stepped in, and it was a girl after 3 boys. And so I wanted to sort of shift and change all of those traumas and those beliefs that I had and make it really different for her. I didn't want her to grow up in the same existence that I grew up in.
So the fact that it was a girl kind of shifted a little bit of how you felt you had to mother her so that she was not repeating the same patterns you had repeated. That was the big shift as well. So the part that you said about who you were, it is so true. It's in these like midlife. I read a book called Midlife Awakening by Marianne Williamson, which is really that. It's like this midlife. It's not a crisis. It's an awakening at this age that we may have of realizing, wait, who am I? Who am I also with all these roles that we play? Because we do play so many different roles in our life, the daughter, the mother, the wife. Like, who are you when all that is stripped down and trying to
Mhm.
figure out at the core who you are? So it's very, I think, very common for a lot of us at this time to start to kind of question that. So what was your life before and in the raising then of the boys when you were younger? And what kind of work did you do then?
So I raised them in a really small community in New Jersey called Hackettstown, New Jersey. And I worked in the corporate world. I worked for Prudential and Aetna, and I did medical claims. And I did that for 20 years until I went to a private practice with a doctor. The very traditional upbringing, we had soccer, football, baseball every weekend. I worked part-time outside the home, and my husband worked full-time. My ex-husband worked full-time. It was just a very traditional upbringing for my sons, growing up in that small, really tight-knit community. And my life is so, I look at that life sometimes. It's funny. I just said to my current husband now, I said the other night, I was like, my life was so different back then. I look at it and I can't even identify with it anymore. It's like I don't even know who I was. And I remember going back at that time and saying, oh, like every few years I would sort of shift. Something would shift within me, but I didn't really understand what it was. I began to be not happy in this corporate world. I was inundated with this masculine role that I had to play. And I hated playing the masculine role, but it was something that I did and I identified with for so long. I knew no other way. And so after getting pregnant and having a spiritual awakening, things shifted so quickly. It was sort of the preparation for coming into what would happen in my life. My daughter was born sick. That's really what led me to Reiki. She was born with a blocked intestine. She had 4 intestinal surgeries, and she bled internally for 3 years, and we were all over the country. Every month she would receive blood transfusions, and she was too small to operate on. It was too risky, too dangerous. So that's what obviously turned me into Reiki. I was looking for alternative ways, more natural ways to heal her because what we were doing wasn't working. And I did Reiki 1 and 2 back to back. I found a Reiki Master Teacher. We were already living in Arizona at the time, and I fell in love. There was this resonance within me, and I talk about it now and I get goosebumps because I lit up. It was the first time in my life that I really felt like I was me. And it came to this realization that I had to learn more and more about this practice and what it was. Even though my cellular body, my soul knew what it was, I needed Terri Ann to know what it was and understand fully what it was.
And in these moments of you trying to find those solutions for your daughter, that you find Reiki, that you try to like, okay, let's see this more of this holistic approach to her health rather than just one way, right? So applying what you had learned, how did you find that this helped her process? You already practicing Reiki. And if you want to explain for those listening, if by chance they don't know what Reiki is, if you want to define what it is.
Sure. Well, I grew up Catholic and they have laying of the hands. So it's very natural for me to work with my hands, and we'd go to church and we'd do laying of the hands, healing on people. Reiki is just a Japanese version of that. But when I did it through church, it didn't connect the way that I did through Reiki. So with the process of Reiki, Reiki 1 makes you go through a 21-day self-healing process. And for 21 days, you're responsible for doing self-healing on yourself. And through that process alone of Reiki 1, awakened something within me. I could feel where blockages were in my body. I started to feel within her, and there was this sacred connection, right? My daughter and I lived lives before. At that time, I didn't understand fully what that would mean until my son would pass, but I felt this connection with her too. And so through the process of doing Reiki on her was a beautiful, beautiful experience. And I learned to love myself through that process because of that 21-day process you go through.
That's Amazing. Okay, you mentioned your son. So tell us about Anthony and the circumstances a little bit, and how long ago he transitioned. Which word do you like to use?
Yeah.
Transition. When he transitioned, and where were you in your life at that point?
It was funny because I had been divorced, remarried. My daughter was healthy. I was living in Sedona, Arizona, and I was practicing healing. Was learning past life regression at the time, which talks about soul contracts. I was living my best life. I was the happiest, and I was the most confident in who I was and who I had ever been. And then I met the most beautiful soul tribe. And so I was working with some famous psychics and mediums in Sedona. And we were there about a year when I got a call that Anthony passed. So it was very sudden. He passed with a condition similar to my daughter. She had the blocked intestine she was born with. His was a pancreatitis. And so his pancreas wrapped around his spleen. And within hours, he bled to death and he passed. And now the interesting thing is, we spent a week together in Vegas 3 weeks before this. Perfectly healthy, didn't complain about anything, said he was just a little tired from working a lot. He was
How old
27.
was he?
Mhm,
27. So young.
27. So and then I was guided a few days before that to go up and see him. So we took a trip. He lived in Flagstaff where he went to college. And I was guided to go up and see him. We spent the day together and it was beautiful. But again, nothing other than he was tired. So I didn't see any signs. I didn't get any information. I wasn't receiving anything. And the ladies I worked with didn't receive anything either. I wasn't meant to know. That was about almost 7 years ago. So that was a Friday I saw him. He got sick Sunday. He went to the hospital. They misdiagnosed him and they sent him home. And he passed within hours on Tuesday. When the paramedics arrived, he was still alive, but they couldn't save him. He had bled to death and his spleen ruptured. So we were living about an hour away and we got a knock at the door in the middle of the night and officers came, and it's just the most heart-wrenching experience you can ever have. um, it broke me in two. And because I was so open at that time, I could feel him, I can hear him, I can sense every piece of him, and I was in such denial that I didn't want to. So I can hear him, outside of my body screaming, I'm okay, I'm okay. And I'm like, no, you're not here, because if I'm talking to you, that means you're dead. And at that time, I would not, how could he be dead? I just saw him 3 days ago. There's no possibility that this can be happening. So all of my psychic sensors were on high alert already. And he was so adamant about connecting. And I was just like, I can't, And so the whole process in the beginning was just very inundating for me. I mean, I had done this work before with other people, but this is my child. There's so much intensity that goes through the grief that you're carrying already, in the stages and the denial and the anger and the frustration. And then I have this peace, and I learned that it would be a beautiful peace, but it would take me time to get there.
I see this beauty too of the timeliness of things, right? You said you had the awakening with your daughter. It's as if you needed all these tools to become who you did in order to be able to carry then the grief that you did after. Did you feel that as a blessing that you had these tools, even though in certain moments, of course, even you can have a toolbox and forget all about it in the moment that there's a disaster, right? You're like, oh, what? I could have used the fire extinguisher, but I was at so freak mode. I ran out of my house and forgot to use the fire extinguisher on the stove or whatever, right? So we could have these tools. And in those moments of overwhelm, like you said, you may not even be able to access them. But the fact that you had already been working on all this, you're then able to then transition. So how did that process start to develop after the initial shock? And then when did you start allowing him to communicate and be open to that, or that your mind would be open to receiving?
Yeah, it was interesting because he wanted me to write the book and write early on, and I was like, I can't do this. It's too raw, it's too vulnerable, it's too emotional. I can't put myself out there like this. I mean, how am I supposed to do this? And so he would guide me through. And I was so blessed because I did have the community that I had. Had I lived in New Jersey or down in Gilbert where we were before we moved to Sedona, I would not have had the support. I don't think I would have survived this life had I not had the physical support here on earth that I had I not had the knowledge that I had gained through that experience. So yeah, absolutely. I had the tools, but I didn't always want to use them. There still came up anger. And because he is who he is, we would banter back and forth. I'd say, I can't believe you're dead. And he'd say, I'm not dead. I'm right here. I'm talking to you. How can I be dead? I'm not dead. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you
And
can't
how would
argue
you
with
hear?
that.
How would you hear? Like, how would you hear? Was it a knowing? Was it in your mind? How was that conversation? How did that conversation evolve? Like, as you're hearing him talk to you?
Yeah, so different times, different ways. The night he died, it was outside of my body. I could hear his voice. I'm okay. I'm okay, Mom. I'm okay. Throughout the process, I can, if it's not imminent, I hear him within my head and I hear his voice. In the beginning, it was more faint because I was in deep grief and I couldn't, it was like almost like we talked about earlier with the connection. I was in a tunnel and the grief was sort of blocking a lot. So sometimes it would come in garbled. It wasn't like full sentences. When I write the book or I channel, it wasn't like, oh, he's saying da 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 da. It wasn't full sentences. It was very garbled in the beginning. But as time went on, our connection strengthened. And obviously, the more that I was able to connect with him, the more that I was able to clear from my physical body because I had the tools of Reiki. I knew what the grief and the heaviness felt like in my chest. I couldn't breathe. I knew that broken heart syndrome is a truth thing. I was worried about my heart. And I knew that Reiki would be the thing that would help lighten that so that I could get back online in a sense and be able to hear him clearly enough so that I could do this book.
So this book, because you've written three. So this one was the first. Is it the one about from death to life? That one is the first one.
That is his book. Yes.
That's his book. So explain to us that process of being his book and you being that channel for that book. Would that be the right word?
Yeah, so some of it's channeled. Some of it is from his experiences as a child that I found in his journals, where he shared about his gifts and how the voices were so loud and he was such an empath that he took on everybody's things and he carried it and it was so heavy for him. So I share some of his journals, some of his letters to his ex-girlfriend. Her and I had connected afterwards. And so she shared some of his letters that I share in the book. And then some of it is the channeling that I have with him and our experience together.
How was this received by the people around you and your kids as you start sharing that you're having these conversations with their brother?
It was interesting because my older children don't believe in anything. I don't try to change their mind. We don't discuss it. They have their beliefs. My oldest is 35 now. He believes what he wants to believe, and I believe what I want to believe. But as I shared the experiences, and Anthony would give me things, little nuggets of wisdom to share with him that only he would know. And he'd say to me, how do you know that? Only I know that, or only Anthony, or only, and I was like, that's exactly how I know. How would I know? That's only something that was between the two of them, and I would share. And a light switch started to go on in him, and he'd say, oh, well, maybe there is something to this. I have a stepdaughter who's very close with him. She's been with me since she was little, and my daughter. And so they had their own experiences in their own way. And my daughter and I would play a game and we'd look for certain animals. So say this week we wanted to look for a lion, and I tell her, because she was only 9 when he passed. And so she had a lot of questions about life and death and was she going to die? And because she had been through tremendous experiences herself. And so we played this game, and I'd say, Anthony says, look for a lion this week. So we'd go out, and wherever we went, we'd find a lion. And it was a way that she could connect with him, that she could understand that, yes, her brother's still there. He's still looking after her. Because, at 9, you can't really conceptualize what life and death is. So I tried to break it down for her. And I found amazing grief groups that I worked with that helped with young children like that too.
Thank you. Yeah, a lot of times when a parent experiences such grief and the death of a child, I'm a child of that. I'm like one of your kids, that I'm a surviving child per
Okay, a
se. My
sibling.
sister died. Yes, I'm a sibling. And my sister died. And so a lot of times when you're the sibling, right, so much attention can go into your parents change first off, because
Yes.
they've just experienced the biggest change. Then no longer have your sibling. You no longer really have the same parents anymore, right?
Yeah.
And you have to also shift the dynamic of the family. So how did all the family dynamics start shifting? Did you start noticing that a lot in the family dynamics when Anthony passed?
Yeah. So Anthony was 27, Eric was 29, and my youngest son, Tyler, was 26. So very close. They were 3 years apart, the three of them. Our life changed dramatically. My oldest threw himself into work, and that's how he dealt with grief. He still hasn't really dealt with it. My youngest started drinking a lot, and that's how he dealt with it. But they were adults and they were out of our home. And so it wasn't as prevalent as having my daughter or my stepdaughter with us. But you do change, and it changes you in a way in the beginning that's very hard. My daughter would say, my daughter was very independent, and she'd say, come on, mommy, get up out of bed today. We got to go do this, or I need help with this. And so intuitively, she knew this is what I needed to pull me out of that. Because as you know, from your experience with your parents, there were days I didn't want to get out of bed. There were days I didn't want to live. And so in the beginning, that was her way to sort of pull me through that. I believe she was truly a gift. I believe that I contracted it in another space and time, all of us, all of this to come into at this time.
Yeah, because having her, you needed to make sure at least she got fed, dressed to go to school, those kind of things. It gave you purpose to get out of bed, even
Yeah.
though you did not want to, right? For me, that was my dogs. When my mom died, was my dogs. I'm like, okay, well, I had one at that time. I had to take her out to go walk.
Yes.
It made me go out in nature and be out there and connecting. So yeah, there's these kind of ways in which life kind of puts itself together in a way that supports us in these different changes that come to be later on. So I can see how that was for you, like just
Yeah.
perfectly orchestrated. We don't see it when we're in the middle of it. When you're removed a bit from it, then you can see that orchestration of it all, like just like a dance, right? Even amidst that grief, you see this beautiful relationship of your daughter helping you, and then also you being able to connect. It's just it's so beautiful and spiritual, even if it's heartbreaking and
Yeah.
heart-wrenching, right, what you're going through. So in your journey then, now you connecting with Anthony, and as a Reiki practitioner, do people seek you for Reiki? Do you also do mediumship for others, or do you only do it for yourself? Can you share about that?
Sure. So I do Reiki still. It was my first love, and I did it. I volunteered a little through hospice, and I did Reiki. It finally started getting more prevalent in the hospitals when my daughter was sick 8 years ago, 9 years ago. They didn't really know of Reiki yet in the hospitals. And so being able 9 years later now to go into the hospitals and do Reiki on people that are sick or people that have had surgery has been a blessing. I mean, I truly love that I was able to do that. I don't do mediumship. It's not my thing. When he passed, I was already doing mediumship, and I found it very difficult to separate my grief from my client's grief. And it's just not a road I wanted to go on early on. I can do it. I just choose not to do it. But my first love is Reiki, past life regression. I love to learn about contracts and souls and why did we do this, right? Oh, that's the beginning. I was like, why would I do this? Why would I agree to such a horrible existence? And he would say, you didn't only agree, it was your idea. So in
what was your
spirit,
relation? Yeah, in spirit, what was your relationship? What in the other lives? Because you said also with your daughter, like, did you find out in your own experience what your relationship was in other past lives with Anthony?
yeah. So before I had learned past life regression, I had a past life regression session and I was immediately drawn to it. It was something that I knew I wanted to do and learn. After I became certified, so my first session was I had a couple of lives. One was with my current husband. Anthony and I were married. We were a married couple and I died. And so now I wanted to experience as a human what that was like for him after, in another life. And then my daughter and she was the mother and I was the daughter. And I can totally see it because she's such a mother of me. Like, I'm like, you don't have to take care of me. But she always feels like she has to or tell me what to do or tell me what's best for me.
Understanding past lives and stuff is something that I didn't grow up with, but with that belief system. So for me to be able to learn more about people's beliefs, I love having these conversations because I get to learn more. What you know about past lives, is there a point in which the soul decides, okay, I'm good? Or how many lives of what you're understanding and you're learning do some souls feel they need to have in order to get to the level that they feel they're okay to now just have a spiritual life and not continue to have a physical life?
I think it's individualized and there's no like particular number. Like, I feel like it could be in the thousands, honestly, because when you go to spirit, you see things totally different. So in spirit, like, yes, put me in, coach. I'm ready to go. I'll do this. No problem. I'll learn so much and I'll grow so much. So in spirit, we see things so differently than we do on the human plane. But in spirit, we contracted this. So when I learned, I didn't also grow up with this. So Catholics do not believe in past lives. So I did not grow up with this belief, but there was something that deeply resonated with me. I felt it when I met my husband. Before I even knew about past lives, I was like, I had never felt like this with anyone other than obviously my daughter that I had mentioned, but with a man. So there was this feeling, this knowing, and I felt it from within. I mean, it's not even just like chills or goosebumps, it's like electricity through you. I mean, if you've seen it in the movies, it's like that. It's like, bam, and there it is. And because I had said I was never going to do it again. I was never going to get married again. I was married to her dad for 18 years and I was like, I'm not going to do this again. And then there he was. So I truly believe. And when you do a past life regression, when I do it, so when I work with someone like you, say, you're telling me, so I'm not reading and telling you, you're experiencing it. Your soul is speaking to me. And so you're getting the feeling of this knowing that you've lived with this person before. And this is what your relationship was. And so I feel like there's a deeper level on that than just me doing a past life reading for you. Does that make sense?
Yes, because you're just you get the person to a point in which then they connect to that to then be able to share with you rather than you telling them this is where you were.
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then does this work online, in person? How do people meet with you?
Yeah, you can do it online. I do it over Zoom, or you can do it in person. It's an amazing experience. It's a light hypnotic trance, so you're under, but you're not under so deep that you can't get out of it. I've never had anybody that has, wanted to get out that couldn't get out, and so it's very light hypnotic trance. It's called theta state. So you're in a theta state, and I've not even seen like duplicate lives. I've done over 200 past life regressions, but they're never the same. You can do them on somebody over and over and over again, and you'll get totally different things that come through.
And in that state, is there any way in which someone can get themselves into that state themselves, like aside from somebody guiding them? Does it feel like this is for me dreaming? I mean, I literally don't wake up. Sometimes I don't want to wake up, not because that I'm tired and want to keep sleeping. It's just because I want to stay in my dream state.
Yeah.
Like, I love being in my dream state and trying to figure out what my dream means and where, wait, I haven't finished this chapter kind of thing. Like if I'm in the middle, if somebody just woke me up in the middle of a really good, book or movie. So is that the feeling of being in that theta state?
Yeah, it's like it's the place between wake and sleep. You're sort of awake, but you're still sort of asleep. And so in that place, you can have visions, you can have epiphanies, you can hear, see, know, feel, however you intuit information. And it's funny because the editor for Anthony's book was a dream interpretator. And so I've had 54 dreams with him. So he likes to communicate through dreams. Now, I since have lost my dad in the last few years to cancer. And my dad, very reserved, very quiet. So my dad, I don't hear a lot, but my dad likes to play with electricity. So for me, the experience has been with working with clients and my own experience that our loved ones also have different gifts that they use to communicate with you. So not only do we receive information differently, but they also give information differently.
Yeah, it makes sense because anyway, to just who we are, even as individuals in this physical form, we each have different talents and abilities. Some of us are more musically inclined, and we're this, or we're good chefs, and in our spirit life, the same. We'll kind of find our way in our spiritual form as to how it is that we navigate that world and what our talents and strengths are in that state.
I have not met one person that is not intuitive, that has lost a loved one, right? I've always had clients come in and say, well, I sort of had a feeling, or I felt something, or I heard something. Somebody called my name. I was laying in bed and I heard my mom call my name. We all have had these experiences, but we sort of push them away, or we need the logical. This will confirm for me. If you tell me this, this will confirm it. And they're up there usually laughing because they're like, this is really the one, right? Are you sure this will be the one?
Yeah, I know. It's like we try to make it be our way, yet sometimes they've already found a way, but we're trying to listen in the way that we want to understand, right? Or if I say this to people, if you see it as a sign, if in the moment that you see that, you feel something, or the memory of that person comes to mind, then it is a sign. Take it as whatever it is you're feeling in that moment, and take it as that. It doesn't matter what the rest of the people think. If it's bringing you comfort to think that it is, you take it.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what we're gonna do. So now tell us about the other books that then you wrote. So you wrote then the first one, which is Anthony's book. So From Death to Life, The Incredible Story of Anthony Joseph. Second one is the Crystalline.
Oh, the Crystalline Light series, Reaching
Okay.
for You, and that's with Mother Mary. And so first, let's go back. So
Yes.
I believe grief isn't only about grief, right? My experience and the experience of people that I work with is
About death. That is not only about death. Yeah. Grief is
right.
not only about death. Yeah.
Right. We're also learning to let go of people pleasing, setting boundaries, finding yourself. Where did you cut yourself short when you should have been putting yourself out there? All of these things, grief unlayers that in you. And so the Mary book, the Crystalline Light series, was this project. So after Anthony passed, we sold everything, our business, we moved. It was during COVID. We went on the road for a year. We homeschooled my daughter, and we lived in an RV and traveled the country. It was the most healing experience I've ever had in my life. I was able to connect with nature, and I was able to be myself and learn so much about myself, my daughter, my husband. So about that time, it was 2 years after his death, I was going through this immense grief again. And I didn't want to be here anymore. It had been too hard now. 2 years I've been going through this. I'm like, look, we need to make a deal. Something needs to change. I can't do this. Mary steps in. And so because I have a Catholic upbringing, I've always had this affinity, I feel, to Mother Mary. Mary steps in, says, I too lost a son, broke my heart. And I started channeling Mary. It took a year to channel, to write the transmissions in the book. It took another year for me to integrate all of that energy in those 12 transmissions myself. I'm sort of like the guinea pig, if you will, for the books. And so I underwent a huge, massive transformation even after the death of him. And so this was this another unlayering of all of this stuff. And so the Mary book helps you unlayer. It helps you look at forgiveness, look at patterns. She's speaking to you. Do the transmissions. They're spoken words, just as you and I are speaking today. The spoken word can be a transmission. I am powerful, transmission. And so that's the Mary book.
And then the third book then is Life After Death, A Glimpse of Heaven. Tell us about that one.
Yeah, so that book is all past life regressions.
About other people's lives or yours?
Other people's lives. Clients that I had through past life regressions that they had died, went to the other side, came back through the past life regression, obviously, their loved ones and stuff like that. And so it shares another piece of other people's experiences with life after death. We've all done it. And I say all the time to people when I'm speaking, none of us are immune to grief. We're going to go through it at one time in our life or another. Some of us have a more difficult path laid before us here for whatever reason that we've set that up on this journey. But we're all going to experience it, and we're all going to experience it differently.
Mm-hmm. Now, you do something then aside with your regressions. You now also help people with this sacred alchemy of awakening, loss, and identity rebirth. Tell us what that looks like. And is that part of the regression consult?
So it's part of the regression, but it also does a lot of channeling in that as well. So I found through the regression, it was sort of missing something because, people, even though they're in a light hypnotic state, they come out and they're questioning, well, why did I do that? What was that about? And where was that? I've never seen that before. And so the channeling offers another aspect of that I can offer them with my abilities, the ability to put the pieces together, if you will. Through that experience now, we're going to unlayer, we're going to open up. It's not no longer about just like, oh, I want to see a past life regression to see who I was in another life, because a lot of us have this fantasy, oh, I was Cleopatra, I was Napoleon. So far from the truth. Most of us were these people in other lives that have learned lessons, and now we're in this life, we're supposed to carry those lessons, learn and grow from them, and evolve. And so these experiences are to sort of help release everything that we've held on to, all of that heaviness, all of that hatred, all of that frustration, that doubt, that fear that keeps us from living our true authentic life.
Yeah, because it's one thing knowing that information and then, okay, yes, I know that, but now how do I apply it to the life I am in now, right? And how do I carry that forward and be able to transform my current life with the information I know about the past? Because it helps to understand your past, just even if it's your own life, right? Okay, this was the past. This is my family's history past. Like now, if it's also your soul's past, then you get that. But it helps to understand the present. But then how do we move forward with this information and grow, like you said? So it's important to use those tools and to carry on. No, okay, what is my purpose and how do I develop these in this life? So that is very helpful. Thank you, Terri Ann. Terri Ann, is there anything I have not asked you that you wish to share with the audience?
No, I think you've been very informative. I would just like to add that I believe grief is a sacred space. And I believe in that space that we are meant to transform and grow through that experience. Yes, it is painful. It's heart-wrenching, but the end, the other side of the experience, we get to experience sadness and joy as a cohesive existence.
Thank you so much. Again, this was Terri Ann Russell. All her links will be in the show notes, so make sure to check that out so that you can know where to buy her books as well as connect with her. Thank you so much, Terri Ann.
Thank you.
Thank you again so much for choosing to listen today. I hope that you can take away a few nuggets from today's episode that can bring you comfort in your times of grief. If so, it would mean so much to me if you would rate and comment on this episode. And if you feel inspired in some way to share it with someone who may need to hear this, please do so. Also, if you or someone you know has a story of grief and gratitude that should be shared so that others can be inspired as well, please reach out to me. And thanks once again for tuning in to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. Have a beautiful day.